You ever hear a silence so thick it almost has a taste? Not the quiet of an empty house, but the kind where 300 people all stop breathing at once because they just watched someone break a kid, and they know, in that frozen moment, that nothing will ever be the same. My name is Sam Ortiz. I was in row 14 on Flight 427 to Phoenix, and what I'm about to tell you is the kind of thing that stays in your chest. It bruises you, then it changes you. Act 1. The hook, the setup. It was a wet gray morning at Portland International, the kind of weather that makes people clutch their coffee like it's an anchor, the gate, a small ecosystem of impatience and perfectly timed convenience fees. There was a man in a suit that could have paid my rent for a year, neat haircut, expensive shoes, attitude like oxygen, and he was making sure everyone knew he belonged to a different zip code. His name, as I later learned, was Richard Hale. He barked at the gate agent about priority boarding, about how he had investor status. Like that bought him the right to be kinder. 2 seats down, a kid stood with a hoodie and earbuds, a backpack slung over one shoulder, face like somebody trying to be smaller than his body. That was Jordan Cole. He was maybe 16, carrying a ticket and a nervousness that made him curl his shoulders in as if to disappear. When we boarded, Hale shoved through like a man on a mission, elbows out, coffee in hand, laptop already awake, his world arranged neatly around him. Jordan found his seat, 2B in the forward cabin, and Hale saw him, and something in Hale's face went cold. It wasn't just irritation about space. It was contempt, slow and bright. We took off the plane, climbed through a few bumps, nothing wild, until a hard jolt made a drink spill. Jordan's reflex swung his arm back, and a glass of scotch arced from Hale's tray, landing with a hiss on his keyboard and staining his trousers. I watched the scotch trail like fate watched Hale's face change from annoyed to furious in a heartbeat, and I knew that whatever happened next wasn't going to be a scolding. "Jesus, kid, watch yourself," Hale barked like the kid had committed a crime. Jordan stammered, "I'm sorry, sir, I didn't mean to," but Hale wasn't interested in an apology. He rose, not gentle, and it felt like the plane became a little world where his rules applied. Passengers craned, the flight attendant tried to calm things, and then Hale shoved Jordan back down so hard his head cracked the side panel, a sick, hollow thud that changed the mood from tense to toxic. Blood came, and for a stupid, awful second we all looked at the red like it was part of the upholstery. That first act is where you meet the villain, generous with his privilege, stingy with his humanity, and the victim who tries to be invisible and ends up very painfully visible. It's where the stakes get set, dignity on the line, safety violated, and the question that sits in the air like static: will anyone do anything? Act 2. Resistance. Turning point. The first 3 seconds after the punch were the quietest I've ever known. Then something shifted. A man in row 14, big, quiet, wearing an old flannel, got up. He didn't shout a speech, he didn't call for justice like a movie line. He simply walked forward, steady as a wall. Other folks followed. A nurse from row 5, a veteran with a service patch, 3 of us who had our phones out but had hesitated. We moved because the kid was bleeding and because a grown man had decided he owned the right to hurt someone. Hale tried to lie like it was a reflex. "He assaulted me," he said. Voice oily, his chest puffed with the kind of entitlement that assumes the world listens to his version first. But video doesn't lie. 10 phones recorded. 100 little cameras caught the arc and the fall and the wet thud. The flight diverted to Eugene. Paramedics met us on the tarmac, and the police came with faces that read the whole scene faster than Hale could conjure excuses. Here's the twist that made my jaw drop. Jordan wasn't some random kid flying under the radar. When officers checked his bracelet and paperwork, a name popped up: Jordan Whitaker. Not exactly unknown, Jordan was the son of Charles Whitaker, a titan in the logistics world, one of those men whose signature makes headlines, whose money buys privacy. The room shifted. Suddenly, the man who had thought cash could shield him realized cash could damn him too. That realization didn't come from Hale, though. It came from the kind of slow, relentless thing the internet does now. Within hours, footage was everywhere. People who would normally scroll past were dissecting his life. A corporate board pulled a meeting, and within the day, a high-powered lawyer, not a TV show lawyer, a calm, clinical man named Ethan Marsh, showed up in a room where Hale expected favors. Marsh carried a single sheet of printed paper and a look that suggested he'd already done the math on Hale's future. He ripped a contract to pieces, told Hale the deal he'd been chasing was dead, and said words that hit harder than any headline. "Your company's stock is tanking, you're fired, and the FBI is on the way." Watching Hale's face collapse was a lesson in how fragile a life built on privilege can be when the scaffolding gets pulled away. He called his boss, his voice breaking with panic. He called his lawyer, who couldn't paper over a videotaped assault. That's when legal punishment met social punishment. Arrests were made, charges were filed, and people who had only minutes before invisibilized Jordan now rallied for him. For Jordan, the turn wasn't just about vindication. He had an agency that surprised everyone. He and his family decided not to bury the incident in hush money. They made it public, used the settlement to build something that would protect other kids, and pushed airlines to rewrite training and safety protocols. Jordan, who had been trying to be small, became someone who demanded better treatment for others, using the controversy as leverage for systemic change. Act 3. Resolution: the messy victory. The trial felt like watching truth win in real time. Hale's swagger was gone. The footage, the witnesses, the testimony, especially from Jersey, the nurse who described Jordan's injuries and the flinch in Hale's manner, painted a picture the jury didn't need to stretch. The verdict came quick, and the sentence was heavy. There's a part of punishment that's retributive and a part that's corrective. I'm not here to celebrate criminal misery, but there's relief in seeing someone held to account when the evidence is clear. The part that stuck with me the most wasn't the gavel. It was seeing Jordan, months later older somehow, in a magazine profile about his new nonprofit, a program called Open Aisle, providing legal help and travel advocacy for teens and marginalized flyers. He hadn't chosen vengeance. He chose building, and that makes the story more complicated and truer. He told me once quietly I went to see him in prison, not to gloat, but to close the chapter for myself. He watched a man who believed he was untouchable reduced to someone sweeping floors. Jordan said the trip freed him more than any courtroom ever could. And yet, the story doesn't wrap neatly. There are questions that hang, about who speaks up and why, about the role of cameras in justice, about when public shaming helps and when it only destroys. Could the same thing have happened before? Phones made us all witnesses? Maybe not. Does that mean justice now favors the spectacle? Sometimes. Are we comfortable with that trade-off? You should have an answer. So here's what I want from you, and I mean really want. Tell me what you would have done in row 14. Would you stay quiet to keep your head down, or would you stand and risk trouble to help a stranger? Have you ever seen someone judged by the seat they were assigned or elevated by the price of their ticket? Drop your story below. I read every comment, and I don't want the conversation to end at the click of a button. If this story moved you, hit like so more people hear it. Not because we crave clicks, but because the more eyes on these moments, the less likely they are to be shrugged off. Subscribe if you want more stories where ordinary people choose between silence and action, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next one. Most of all, leave your take justice versus spectacle. Are we better off now that everyone is a witness, or are we trading privacy for a kind of public trial by viral? I want to know what you think. Thanks for listening. And next time you hear a silence that tastes like blood and fear, I hope you'll remember Jordan and the people in row 14 who decided they couldn't let that silence hold.